when you say that, you can just do it. I'm not gonna drop a bunch of N bombs like
Well,
on
I
our
don't know, man. We had a weird
You just like
situation last week with that. Hey,
rapid
everybody in the chat,
fire.
if you can hear V, please let us know
Oh
because
yeah.
the sooner, you know,
Yeah.
sooner we make that happen or whatever, the better off we'll
So we
be.
can deal with our technical technical difficulties right away.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
'Cause that's the thing.
That's pretty wild. That
Mm. The Eddie Vedder. What does he say? I'm going hungry. And then what's his name? Chris Cornell. He goes in the background. You hear him going, "He's going hungry."
yeah.
It's like
You
because
know what? I
he's got
forgot
like a
about that song.
higher pitched voice. Temple of Dog. Hunger Strike is the name of
Yeah,
the song.
I was thinking, who's the fella who committed suicide from Lincoln Park?
I
His
don't
name
know.
was also
I was
Chris.
never a fan. There was
It, it's important because John Podesta raped him.
really, I
Yeah,
believe that.
yeah.
I was never a fan of Linkin Park, so I can't. I know there was the dude from Stone Temple Pilots. He died of like a super drug overdose. What was his name? Waylon something. Chris Waylon. Someone's got to know. What's the name of the dude from Stone? Well, the dude that died. He was married to Sarah Michelle Gellar,
Really?
the fucking Buffy, the second Buffy, not the cool one that's super conservative. What's her
Christy,
name?
Christy
Christy
something,
Son. Yeah, Christy
Swanson,
Son.
Swanson.
Christy Swanson. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it is.
yeah. See, every once in a while, I know some weird, it's like some weird
Yeah.
little tidbits or whatever. Like who, because
Yeah.
who else would have known Christy Swanson's name?
Yeah, no,
Nobody
no,
really.
nobody.
But
I've seen posts on her Twitter where people are like, "Who the hell is Christy Swanson?"
yeah, yeah.
Like, motherfucker, she's the first damn, uh, she's Buffy, dude. She
Yeah.
wasn't really anything else, but she was Buffy, you know.
Yeah,
It says something.
a lot of kids jerked off to her back in the what early '90s, mid '90s.
I want to say it was like early 90s.
Okay,
Yeah, because the show was like 90s, right? So it
I
could
don't
have.
know. I couldn't tell you. I don't know
You
much
never you
more
never
other than,
watched the Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel?
buddy. I've beat off more times to Buffy the Vampire Slayer than I was coming of age at that time. So
She
believe
was
me when I
hot. She was
say,
hot. Her friend too. They had like the first lesbian relationship on that show in all of I
TV.
feel bad. I feel bad. Here's something. Here's a sad and probably offensive thing to say. You remember Seventh Heaven, the show about all the gospel and church kids,
Mm-hmm.
and it
I
had
mean, I never watched it, but I remember it
it had
being existing. Yeah.
yeah, it was like a Christian show about this Christian family and the pastor or whatever, and then it had Jessica Biel in it, and she was she's still damn. She's like and I will admit that I like rubbed a couple out to that show. So if that show like that's kind of like a bad thing, it's like jerking off to a nun or something.
Yeah. Oh, you know what I think's going on here? See, I've been trying to figure out what was going on with the
Hmm.
audio situation, but I now realize that it's because I'm not. Anyways, unrelated. Oh, Chester Bennington. That's why. J Coop. J Coop coming through in a
Oh,
pinch. Always,
that
as always.
Bennington, yeah,
Um,
sounds like a made up name.
yeah, it sounds like the kind of name. Sounds like the kind of person that John Podesta would diddle, and he
Yeah.
did, and that's a fact. And then he committed suicide because he was looking into pedophilia and that sort of stuff. Not looking
Ooh.
into it like, hey, I should get into this, but looking into it like, who's doing this? You know?
So maybe I'll dabble. I'll
Yeah.
dabble.
Let me stick my toe into pedophilia and see if it's for me.
That's
No,
fun.
nope, it's not for me. But at what point is it like? At what point have you gone too far where you're like, well, I'm a pedophile?
Yeah.
Just dipping your toe into it. Uh, he says, VS says, always a good sign when the stream starts with nostalgic coom posting. So it took me a second because as I was like grazing, looking over that's the thing with these people today. I don't understand what half these words are that people say,
Yeah.
and it's always followed by posting. And what's the other one? Pilled. And like you can combine, like you think you've got a good grasp on like, oh, shit posting, I know what that is, and such and such posting, and then, like, people put words together and they become their own word, very like Shakespearean in its own way. And same thing, and that's how many of the words that we have today came to be, is because Shakespeare took a chance and made up words, and people were like, oh, I know what that is, yeah, I've heard the word puke before. But it was actually Shakespeare made it up. And I think nerd was the first time that word was ever used was Dr. Seuss. He just made it up. But these, people are making up words just by mashing words together, and you got to try to keep up. And I can't. I'm having a hard time. The such and such pilled. That's another thing, like red pilled, blue pilled, and then people will just start mashing whatever pilled together, and you kind of got to, like, you don't want to not look like you're hip and with it. So you kind of just like laugh with them, and you're like, yeah. Totally, man. But you don't know what they're talking about. And I'm at this point where, like, we're live, we're talking. I'm not going to tell everybody that I encounter. Like, I don't know what that means. But while we're broadcasting live to all 7 viewers, I'll come out and I'll say it right now. Half the time I don't know what you're talking about, and I'm too afraid to ask. I'm that Chris Pratt picture. I have no idea what that is, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask. So that's where I am. V, I know you had some stories that you wanted to tell. Are you ready to dive right into your story?
Yeah, might as well.
Today is story time with Papa V.
Yeah, I got a couple.
Papa V sounds like either like a cool move that you do on a BMX bike, or it sounds like some kind of double entendre. I'm gonna take her out back and Papa V.
Papa V in her. I got a Papa V in her.
You just pop a V, and what that means, I don't know. Again, like, I'm at this point, I'm like, all right, you go do it or whatever. But it turns out it's something like super graphic and disgusting, and I just endorsed it because I don't know what it means. Go ahead, Papa V.
I like it. It's a moniker I can live with. No, well, I do have 2 stories, and I've been dying to tell them to you, and I've refrained from telling to you in our text messages because, we talk about everything, and then, like, I had a couple funny stories and things happen that, like, it was at the point where it was like I really wanted to tell you, and the one of them, the first one, which I'll tell you, it happened like at the beginning of the week, or no, like last week.
Yeah, so you've been sitting on this one for a while. I've been
sitting on this one, but you're gonna love this, and it already starts out like it's gonna crack you up because right away I'm gonna have to bring up that I'm like doing this intermittent fasting thing.
Oh, really? Tell us more about that, V. You haven't before.
I have to bring that up, right? I have to make sure that I mention that I'm doing my intermittent fasting, and so I'm doing a ton of walking. Like, I'm walking every fucking day, like 6 miles in the morning, and then I do another 3-4 in the evening. And now I'm like stepping up my game because this is, I'm not trying to brag.
No, you don't want to plateau, right?
Yeah, I don't want to play. And I go, well, I'm not trying to brag here or anything, but I low-key have lost 20 pounds since I've started doing this. I'm literally at 20, like my 20-pound mark, so I've got 40 more pounds to go. And it's like working, and like I'm eating less and like exercising more. So that's good news, right? So I'm out there doing my walk, and like I've upped my game because I saw the other day, I was like, I only lost 2 pounds this week, and that's like nothing. It should be 5 pounds a week. And so I'm all like mad at myself. So I'm upping my game where I'm like doing sprints now, right? What I do, and this is the nerd out right here, is I'll sprint to a Pokestop, right? So I'll sprint to the Pokestop, and then usually it's a park, so I can walk around the whole park and, hit all the stops, right? And then the next stop is another park, so I sprint to that park, right? So I've been doing this, and, my game's been upped here. Well, the other day I was doing it, and I had refrained from doing my sprint right off the bat because I've been getting up way early, so I'm kind of like groggy when I start doing it. And like groggy, dude, like kind of, I'm not all there,
I know what groggy means, man.
Yeah. And what I mean, like, my situational awareness is compromised, right? So I'm like, So I like, so anyways, I'm doing like my thing, and I'm kind of whatever, and so I start picking up I get a little hustle going, right? I start doing my jog, and like a good like 15-20 seconds, and then I realize like I start feeling like this weird thing like brushing up against my ankles, and I'm like, what the fuck? So I look down, and my shorts are fucking like on my shoes. And like the worst part about it is as you know,
you sleep in the nude.
I don't wear underwear. So there was like a good like 15, 20 seconds where I was basically running with my dong hanging out. And like the worst part about it is like that's not even the worst part. Like I literally like the day before I did Manscaped, dude. Like
Oh, well, I'm
I
sure that
actually
was appealing to anybody who saw. At least they were looking at that instead of a like
it's
a
like
big hairy bush, right?
the good thing is like aside from that, the good thing is that like yeah, I go early in the morning, so I was lucky enough to where there wasn't anybody around to see it. But there was a good like it was like 15 to 20 seconds, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but 15 to 20 seconds is a long time, dude. Like running
When
with your dick
you,
out.
yeah, anytime that you have your penis out, 15 to 20 seconds can be an eternity.
Yeah.
Now, my question to you, V, and I'm not doubting your story, and it's a two-parter, okay? How big are your shorts that you're able to make a full stride with your shorts down around your
Well,
ankles?
okay, now here's something you have.
Or how short are your strides?
That's what I was gonna. Okay, you're on the right track, and
Okay.
you remember, if you recall, I have something of a unique walk, and I shuffle. I basically shuffle, and when I do my running, I shuffle too. And so, and a lot of people say I drag my feet, or I like, the people that like are annoyed by it. You, why do you drag your feet? Why do you blah blah blah? And I do that when I run too. It's not like I don't get like what do you call it? The full like spread your legs, like lift your legs when you run. I'm basically shuffling. So it's a hustle. It's not like I'm running, full speed with my dick out. I'm getting like a little, a little hustle going. So I didn't notice. And like I said, my situation's early, so I didn't really notice. And like the good thing about it, like I realized is like, well, I'm losing so much weight that like I can't wear these shorts anymore because they don't fit, right? So that's good. That's good news. The bad news is I couldn't do running until I got new shorts because those shorts, if I start running them, they'll inevitably fall down.
So, I'm having I started thinking, I'm like trying to imagine you shuffling with your pants down and your dick wagging in the wind or whatever. And I go to think of that and I'm disappointed that it wasn't that difficult for me to imagine you shuffling with your shorts around your ankles and your dick flopping or whatever.
Yeah.
Was it
Was it cold out? Is that what you're gonna ask if it was cold out?
Was it refreshing? Was more like the question I was going to ask. I've never run naked in the breeze, and I'm curious.
Well,
like, was there? Were you able to look back on the moments that you were freely wagging and like realize it was nice?
I froze because I was like, holy shit! Like, holy shit! My shorts are literally at my ankles, right? And I wear like they're not like basketball shorts, but they're like that thin material, right? So they do kind of not feel like they're there already, right? And so like my first instinct was obviously to pick them up and pull them up as fast as I can, but then quickly look around because what do you do when you do something stupid? You immediately look around to see if anybody saw, right? And then, of course, there's no end. The worst part about it is I was actually in a residential area at this point. So it could have been very bad for me, or like, probably really funny for somebody else.
Jacob wants to know if anyone saw your dong, V.
Yeah, nobody saw my dong, unfortunately. And my shirt is long enough to where they probably would have just saw the tip anyways. I'm not well endowed over here or anything. I don't have like a baby arm or anything.
See, this is why you have to run with a boner all the time, because it keeps a boner is nature's belt, right? When you're wearing shorts like that, it holds the shorts up for you. God endowed us with a boner for that purpose, for that exact purpose. He knew. Yeah. It held the leaf up.
You tuck your boner up, right, and like in your belt.
No. I'm talking about like when you're wearing shorts, like you were doing, and you have a boner. It just lifts the front end up so that the elastic doesn't go down, slide over it. You know what I'm saying? If it's upward, then it's going to hook it into place. So if you run with a boner, your pants are never gonna fall down. Is what I'm trying to explain.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Do I need to draw a picture?
No, I get it now. That's That makes sense. I
VS
guess,
says
yeah.
dong out, phone out, Pokemon Go music and sound effects turned on.
Yeah, that pretty much paints the picture there. Okay, so the second story, and this one is a little bit more elaborate, and I have to preface it with a few things because it was an experiment, right, essentially, and to kind of get to where we're going with the story, I kind of have to give you an idea of like what my experiment was before. My goal was to get something, right, to achieve something, and my experiment was what different methods and how effective are they,
Oh,
right?
this is that story. Okay.
Right, right. And so here's how it goes. The other day I was reviewing my phone bill, which I don't normally do because it's automatically taken out of my account, right? We do the direct whatever, so I don't even think about it, right? And the other day I was just going through it because I was thinking, you know what? I bet I'm due for an upgrade on my phone. I could get a new phone. And so I started kind of like looking through my Sprint stuff and going, oh, I guess blah 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 blah, and then looking at my plan or whatever. Well, it turns out on my plan there's this thing that says Hulu limited with commercials, and I go, what the hell is that? Like, what does that mean? Like, I don't. Does that mean I have free Hulu? Right? Like, what the fuck?
Right,
Right?
right.
So I devise. This is what I devise. I go, if that means that I have Hulu, then I should be able to access it, but I don't know how to access it. So my logic was, I want to see how I can get this achieved, right? How can I get this Hulu access without too much trouble? But to do that, I wanted to try two different methods. And one was essentially to be very dismissive and kind of like the worst customer possible when dealing with a customer service representative, right? And then the other would be the honey, right? The honey pot where
Right,
I'm
right,
like,
right, right.
very nice. And so the first guy I deal with, I get on the chat, right? I do the chat because I knew my logic was there's no nuance. You can't tell the nuance through chat, right? You can't tell what the inflection is of your voice or the emotion or like what you're saying. So a lot of things can be taken out of context depending how you phrase it. And as you know, as you are well know, I tend to come off as abrasive because I articulate or sometimes over articulate, and that can be perceived as condescending. And so right away I get this dude Lester, right? It's all Lester has entered the chat, and I go, and he goes, hello, I'm Lester, blah 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 blah. How are you doing this fine evening? And I go, never mind that, never mind that. I'm not interested in your pleasantries. What I need is you to fix my issue. And he goes, I'm well aware of your issue. How can I help you, right? And I need to know how to access this Hulu. It says that I have it on my account, but I've never had access to this Hulu. And he goes, let me check your account. And I go, well, chop chop. And so so he goes, there's like he's gonna say something, right? You see the little dots, and then like it doesn't say anything, right?
Right.
So you can imagine he was probably thinking of a response. And then he goes, he comes back and he goes, oh, I'm sorry, you don't have access to that. It was a mistake. And I go, what do you mean it was a mistake? Like, it's on my account. I should have access to that. Like, that's bullcrap. And now I start like coloring, like, what do you call it? Sprinkling my words with curses, right? So I'm throwing in fucks and shits in there and bullshit and you're not doing and you're inept. And so I start kind of like berating him a little bit. I go, this is bullshit, dude. I think you're lying to me because why would it be on there if I don't have access to it? And so he explains it to me, right? He goes, oh, well, I have here's the thing is you have a business account, which I do. When I set up my phone was when we were going to start the LLC, so I actually did my phone as a business account. Plus the guy that did it said that I could get a discount, so I was like, oh, okay. And so he goes, you have a business account, so you actually don't qualify for that free Hulu or whatever. And so I go, you know what, dude, this is bullshit. I go, I think you're full of shit, Lester, and I'm going to call you out, and I think you don't know what you're doing, and I think you're inept, and I think you're probably the worst person there. And he goes, I'm sorry that I can't help you. Is there anything else I can help you with? And I go, fuck you. And then I get out of the chat, right? That was my last
click end chat.
Fuck you. Yeah, end chat, right? So the last thing he says is fuck you. So now I proceed to like doing plan B or like the next part of my plan to see if doing the honeyed words works, right? So I get on the phone this time, right? Now we can hear the inflection of my voice. You can hear how I feel. You can tell what I'm saying. And I get a girl this time. And so I'm like, hi, I have this question. And you know what? I'm like very like my voice is going up and down, so it's very like melodical, right? And I go, I have this question, and it seems that I have Hulu on my account, but I don't know how to access it. I was wondering, is it possible that you can help me with that? I know, and I don't want to like find out that I don't have this or whatever. And I'm like kind of very like, soothing, right? And so she goes, oh yeah. And like, and the funny thing is like, I realize now, like when I look back on this, is that I'm instilling that confidence in her, right? I'm making her feel like you must know how to fix this because you're the expert, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she's going, oh, I can help you with that. Let me look it up, blah, 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 right? And so she looks it up and she goes, oh, yeah, it says you have access. It says you have Hulu on your account. Can you try this? I'll send you a link, blah, 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 blah. And I go, no, that doesn't work, right? Because I'm not supposed to have it, right?
Right.
Because I'm not supposed to have Hulu. It doesn't work, right? And she goes, that's weird. And I go, oh, well, thanks for helping. She goes, well, hang on. She goes, let me see if I can try this. And so now she's jumping through hoops, right? And she goes, you know what? Let me just remove it from your account and add it again. And so she removes it from my account and adds it again. And now all of a sudden it works. I go, holy crap. And then the other thing is it links with my old Hulu account. So it brings up everything. Like boom, there it is. Now I have Hulu. And I go, oh, wow, you're so great. Thank you so much for helping me. You did such a wonderful job. I'm going to give you a good review and this, and that. And she goes, no, no problem, blah, 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 blah. Is there anything else I can help you with? No. And I go, no, thanks, whatever. And so I hang up the phone. And now essentially I have free Hulu.
So, I did something very similar. And this is a couple years ago now. With that Hulu thing, because I have Sprint, I think. And
yeah, that's what I have
okay.
too. Yeah.
And I saw a commercial where it said new Sprint users will get Hulu for free or whatever. And I was like, oh, well, that's some bull crap because I have been a Sprint customer for years and years and years, and right. I better get this Hulu thing. So I get on the computer too. I do the chat as well because worst case, or push comes to shove, you can just close it out and then dial it up again. Like if you screw up, it's like having a time machine. If you screw up and you say something that you're not supposed to, you can just real quick hang up and hopefully they'll think you lost the call and then they'll just leave. But I hopped on and I was like, hey, and I started out very abrasive because I was mad at the time. And I said, hey man, what, with this whole Hulu thing, is it just the new customers? And are you guys just spitting in the face of your old customers? Like something like I was like I'm very accusative of like, lobbing accusations at this guy who's probably in India and couldn't care less about what anything that's going on in my life. But I'm lobbing accusations at him, and he goes, no, it's actually for everybody. And he's like, I can go ahead and get you set up with that right away. I was like, well, boy, don't I feel like an asshole. But no, there's something to be said about what you were talking about because anytime I look back on any of my customer service relationships with or interactions with these people, it's always the ones that they say honey catches, you catch more flies with honey, right, than you do with vinegar. It's absolutely true. And this week, I had that. I know I told you a little bit about it with my school, how they're trying to like block me from being able to participate in this residency, and they won't fill out this form. And it's not even a difficult form. Like they've filled it out before. It's literally 4 blocks that they have to fill in with my name, my estimated graduation date, and my degree plan and concentration, and that's it. And then, and it even asks, like, if I'm, the only other thing that it asks is the selective service thing, which it says, if the student is over the age of 26, leave blank or whatever. So that's the only thing on there that they can't fill in. And I got on the phone and I just laid into the registrar lady. And I've known her because I've engaged with her a few times. And that's why it happened. And she was like a victim in this situation because hers was the number that I had that I could call directly rather than guessing who I was going to end up talking to. And so I called her and I'm like, hey, Kyra, I have an issue. And I just laid into her for, probably like 15 minutes. And I was just like really chewing her out. And like the whole time she was like, I'm sorry, Tom. I can't, there's really nothing I can do. You can wait for Dr. Johnson to call or whatever. And I was like, Dr. Johnson's not going to call me because she wouldn't even call the chief of chaplain services, who's also a doctor who went to school there at Asbury. She's not going to call me, some student. And then, and so then I got off the phone with her and then I called and talked to my, advisor or whatever and talked to her for a little while. And I did the same thing to her. Like, I was a little bit more pleasant with her, but I was yelling, but I was yelling at Kyra still. And I think my advisor recognized that because, like, she was laughing at a couple of the things that I said. And so I don't think she felt like I was yelling at her, but I was like just being a real dick. And, and then my advisor told me, well, she's like, I hate to do this to you. Write all the things that you said, to me just now, write it into an email and send it to me. And then I'll forward it to my supervisor, and then we'll be able to get a dialogue going and we'll be able to figure this out.
Right.
And I said, so I'm like, if I can get like some intra-agency turmoil going where like the advisors are getting on to the registrar and then the registrar has to act or whatever, at least something will be happening over there. And so I wrote this scathing email. And I mean, you read it. But I wrote this email or whatever that's very like, and these people, they're purposely taking food off of my children's plates and like all this stuff. And I sent it to her, and she called me back, and she's like, so I can't really do much now that I'm looking at this, and I talked to my supervisor a little bit. There's not much I can do. What I would recommend is sending it to the registrar. So I was like, she's like, reword it and send it to the registrar. And I said, no, Elizabeth. What I'm going to do is I'm going to forward this email that I sent to you, and with the additional traffic of like, you write shit on top of it or whatever. I said, I'll write, to whom it may concern, I wrote this to my advisor, and she informed me that there's nothing that she can do, but I felt that it was in your best interest to know what is being said or whatever. And, something like that, to that effect. And I said, and furthermore, I find it fascinating that this school, I'm not going to say what school it is. I've already given you guys enough information about my life. I don't need you guys to call. That's my worst fear, is like some feminist finding out where I go to school and being like, did you know that he says dick and someone said the N-word on the show the one time? But I said, this school reports or like prides itself in creating and training future or students to enter the ministry. However, as soon as students are given or offered a position in the ministry, you shut it down and you block them from achieving it or from entering it. And I said, I don't know what that says about you that, isn't already glaringly obvious or whatever. So I sent that to him, and I haven't heard back from them. So I assume, I hope at some point the Dr. Johnson will write or will call me or something or email me or something. But yeah, that's I've not done what I guess the moral of the story is. Definitely, if you want Hulu, or if you want to be able to work as a resident at a hospital, don't start your conversations with hey man, or you listen here, Kyra.
Well, it's funny, and my story, the relevancy of it is important because when I was thinking about it, after everything that you told me, what you just said, and you had told me before, I was thinking, man, this is so relevant to what Tom is talking about in his situation, and I wanted to like compare it to that. And it's interesting because we all know what happened last week when that lady wouldn't let me go to the bathroom, and she got fired because of it, because I called down the thunder. And like, here's the thing is like, you can go around and you can like, what Sergeant Smith used to say, stroke the ego of people, and you can make them feel good, and you can kind of con them into doing things. And that's easy because all you have to do is smile a lot, which I've found out recently is actually pretty hard for me. Like, it's like the craziest, my best feature is my smile, and I don't even do it that often. And it's crazy. Like, I was finally laughing because I was like, I need to practice smiling more, because you let people's defenses down when you smile at them. Like, if you smile at somebody, they have to smile back. Like, they feel this, like, and unless you're like, the Elephant Man and you have like a deformed face. But if that's the case,
make it creepier when you smile.
And if that's the case, that's the first step to getting anything you want. And like, that's kind of what I learned this week from this experiment was you can get what you want by just disarming people and smiling and like doing the gun fingers at them. Hey, you know what I mean? Or you can go the terrorist way, I guess you could say, and like stop at nothing to get what you want by destroying everything in your path. And trust me, I've done that. Like, the good example is that lady last week. She wouldn't let me pee, and I was so angry. And like, even in the end, all we got was like a free appetizer, like a coupon for free appetizers. And like, that was all because she wouldn't let me go to the bathroom. And so I felt crossed, and I went out of my way to like ruin this lady's life. Like, she got fired, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And And I think that was a little extreme. Like even for me, that was a little extreme. Although I do laugh about it, and I go, I ruined someone's life. All you did was not let me go pee, and I got you fired, and now you probably can't feed your kids. And then I start doing that in my head, and I go, oh, that was kind of fucked up, huh? Maybe she just was having a rough day, and like there's this side of me which my dad, he always goes, see, you're not that bad of a guy if you have that kind of morality. I go, yeah, there's this side of me that goes, maybe that was fucked up. Maybe she's just having one of those days. And I like, but then again, like there's another side to it. Like I have to look at these like different facets and like variables. And I go, okay, maybe she was having a rough day. I go, but then like my dad made this really good point. We were talking about it today. And I said, I guess, she could have just said, well, I can't let you use the bathroom because it doesn't work and this, and that. And so we can't let any.
She could have lied.
Yeah, she could have just lied, right? But instead she said, well, that's the women's bathroom and I can't let you go in there. And my dad said, well, that's discrimination. And I said, yeah, I guess it is. I go, but how is that discrimination? He goes, because you're a man and she's saying only women can go in there. And I go, yeah, but that's like, we're past that, right? And he goes, listen, Ryan, he goes, it's a bathroom. He goes, you take away whether it's a man or a woman's. This is what he said. If there's no women in that bathroom, it's just a bathroom. You can put a sign on a bathroom and say it belongs to women, but it's still just a bathroom in there. And I go, man, you blew my mind, dude. I go, it's just a bathroom. Like, who gives a shit? I go, somebody could stand out front and go, there's a man in here, so don't go rushing in there just yet. And even then, aren't we past that? You know what I mean? Like, aren't we past that point? Like, is it because of Obama? And I was like, I was to the point where I was going, yeah, I shouldn't have blah, 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 blah. But then my dad said something to me today, and I go, yeah, screw that chick. You know what? I was right. I was in the right. So I don't know. I guess there's a lot of times when it's like, I guess here's the point, is what method suits you in what situation. And I think you have to be able to gauge which one. And in that situation with that lady, my calling down the thunder like Wyatt Earp suited better. Like I could have been sweet and nice to her and been all whatever, but that effect. Okay, and here's the thought: the efficacy of that would have been limited because, first of all, I'm wearing a mask, so you can't see my smile.
Right.
That's the first, that stops everything, right? So all we see is each other's eyes, and if you have beady eyes by genetics, then they're probably already going, this guy's suspect.
So I wonder. There's a couple things. There's some people in the chat who are asking about, they don't remember her getting fired being part of the story. It wasn't.
Oh,
and
no,
I'll clarify that because
yeah.
that happened after the fact. It was like the following day, right? You got
Yeah.
on the Yelp or something and you
No,
started
yeah,
talking
that's right.
about it.
I reviewed her. I reviewed it on Google, and I put like a bunch of shit about how the lady, there was hair in my food, and like she wouldn't put her hair up. And so the manager or the store owner called me that day and like was like, look, man, like I'm sorry all that happened and this and that, and that's not the organization we run. And I was like, well, it kind of is if that's your leadership. I mean, your leadership's the one that's doing it, so that is the definition of how you run your shop. And he was like, well, whatever we can do to make it up to you, and I'll give you some free appetizers. And I was like, yeah, my dad will appreciate that, but I'm not gonna go there again. But yeah, he called me back later and was like, we let that lady go because she basically responded poorly, I guess. Well, I don't know. I can only speculate on what happened, but essentially what it sounded like is she like wigged out and he fired her.
So she was mostly to blame.
Yeah.
You just got the ball rolling, and then
Yeah.
she ended up kicking it further down the hill, like kicking
Yeah,
it faster, farther. So, and here's a theory that I have on that, and this is something that dates back to the Hot or Not days. Remember that website, hotornot.com?
Of course, I was all up on there.
So,
Yeah.
like really like shallow guys like us, we spent a lot
Yeah.
of time on Hot or Not. I used to have this thing where if I saw somebody, and for anybody in the chat who's either too young to remember, who never like ventured into that part of the internet. I mean, this is like
Or
early
do you
internet
like?
days.
Remember, do you like? That was one.
Yeah, where it was like, but the way it was set up was you would upload a picture,
Yeah.
and you would say male or female, or this is back in like binary days, right? Where like
Mhm.
there was nothing more than male or female. But this is pre-Obama days.
Yeah.
Early internet, which was like a wasteland, but it was an awesome wasteland.
It's like the original swipe right, swipe left.
Yeah, it was the original Tinder, but with no, like, you never met the person, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what would happen is you would have the picture, and it would say, you'd pop on and you'd say, I'm looking for females or whatever, or women or whatever, and it would bring up all the women who had uploaded pictures, and there was an algorithm, like, so that the newer stuff popped up early, or the stuff that was like trending or hot or whatever was like would populate more often, and you could pick between 1 and 10, 1 being not hot and 10 being hot, and you would select, and it would just, you'd select, and then it would go to the next one, you'd select and go to the next one, and you could go on there and whatever, and you could post your own pictures, and you would ultimately, it would give you the link, because this is, like, again, before like usernames and passwords, it would just give you a link to your thing so you could see what you were rated. And so I used to go on there, and I would find the really ugly women, and I would give them a 10, because I've always been about chaos, right? And but it made me wonder, and this is something that I think applies in probably most of our situations, right? The way you actually deal with people, and it depends on what they're used to, okay? And you want to do the opposite of that. So if it's a pretty girl, like I'm a bird, if it's a beautiful woman, an attractive woman who is showered constantly with praise, showering her with praise and catering to her ego is probably not going to do anything if you want her to change her behavior.
That's a good point. You
have to be an asshole to her and treat her like she's nothing, and then she's going to want to change your behavior, and by in doing so, she's going to respond in a way that will hopefully change your behavior. And the same thing with an ugly guy or an ugly chick. If you go up and you tell them, hey man, like, I really like those shoes, where did you get those shoes? And you, like, pump them up, not obviously something so like obvious, like, hey dude, I like your bulge, or like, hey, nice beard, or whatever, like something like where it's obvious that it's something's wrong, or you're trying to get something from them. But if you go up to them and you, like, encourage them and cater to their ego a little bit when they're not used to it, probably they're going to be more receptive to you than they would the typical person who comes up and dismisses them as just some nameless face or whatever. So I think that's how you have to, and it's a problem when you're online because you can't tell. Sometimes what I remember when I'm dealing with people online is or like in customer service, if I don't know who they are, what they look like or anything, and I can't apply any of these things, I just remember that, like, probably like 9 out of 10 of their interactions with people are going to be negative. So if I can come in there and be nice to them or be cool with them until they give me a reason to not be cool with them, then I will absolutely lay into them. But
that's a good point.
That's something to look into. Let's do this real quick. Welcome to the chat, Mike, VS, J Coop, Buzz Busby, Justin Welker, trucking guy, and also Megabit Banshee, who joins us 40 minutes late because he's probably out there feeding his chickens, watering his flowers that I'm jealous of every time I see them on Instagram. Welcome to the chat, guys. Thanks for coming and tuning in today for our final episode of the Swingin' Dicks mystery series. I don't know, why did you even decide that we were ending this series?
Well, we wanted to do I wouldn't say that we're ending it, because if anybody wants us to bring it back, I mean, I'm totally up to bring it back. But my logic was, if we do, like, our next one or our last one should be like a good, like, pop culture thing, right? I was like, well, we got to do something that, like, everybody knows for, like, the finale, right? So it's got to be like, it was kind of like a tactic. What do you call it? Like a power play,
marketing
to get more people. Yeah, there you go. Like what do you call that? The promotion. Just a way to get people to watch. Really. And so I thought, hey, we'll call it the season finale and our series finale of the whatever. I actually didn't think we were going to make it the last one, but we might as well.
See, this whole time I thought you were like, oh yeah, we'll do it for the last episode, the last of the season finale. So you're talking about the season finale and stuff. I'm like, oh, so I guess we're done with the swinging dicks, and you're like,
Yeah.
make sure you put in that promo.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it's
yeah.
the finale or whatever. And I'm like, okay. So I just assumed we were done with it. And I mean, next week we end up having a new one. I even I did some research and stuff this week for a change because I thought, well, if this is the last one we're gonna do, we got to make sure we do it right.
Right.
By the way, James is in the chat as well. I like how he yells at me. He hasn't said a word in the chat, and it's not like it tells me who's watching or anything. It just tells me who's said something, and James is like, "I'm here too." I'm supposed to know
because
that.
I love that when last week when he texted you and you were still doing the show.
Yeah.
So the guy was in the chat and then he takes off and then texts you I'm on the show.
Yeah, I'm still here doing this.
You
thing.
know where I'm at. What the?
Yeah, I don't even remember what it was he was talking. I don't remember what it was he was talking to me about. But he and I have been actually talking about 11/22/63, the miniseries on Hulu.
Right. Yeah. Good
And
one.
because I was telling him about the book, we were talking about Stephen King, 2 nights ago, and I was naturally talking about how much I hate Stephen King. And then I said that's really the only book, that and Pet Sematary were I liked those 2 books. That's it. And Pet Sematary is even a stretch because it's essentially Stephen King's autobiography, right? It's a story that actually happened to him minus the part about animals coming back to life. Everything else in that story was straight out of something that happened in his life. So I'm like, this is really not a story as much as it is a memory that he added animals coming back to life. That's it. So it's
Did you do your
it's a
shot,
bit of a
by the way?
stretch. I have not. I've been looking at it, and it's I'm sitting here salivating over my my shot here.
What do we?
I don't know.
To being a con man, to getting what you want out of life.
I like that.
Yeah. All right. Cheers. As I drink my bottle of water.
Hot damn!
What are you drinking?
It was Fireball. It was a little shot of Fireball. I'd forgotten that I'd done that because I'd been drinking Gentleman Jack while you were talking. I'd been sipping it, and then I switched to Fireball. So now I'm all, I should have done it the other way around.
Nice.
That way it would have burnt my mouth, and then the Gentleman Jack would have just gone down smoother. So, what are we talking about today?
Oh man,
do you want to do a little intro? Because I don't think if anybody knows what we're talking about in the chat, go ahead and let us know.
We never gave it away. I don't think we didn't give it away. So we almost did. There was a point we almost did when we were first doing when you were first doing the promo, when you were working on it and you sent it to me and it was just the picture and I was like, well, does that come off as a little, I don't know. So what we're doing this week, and I'll give it away, is we're doing our high profile case. The captain has come down. He's come down to our shitty little office, and he's tossed us this high profile unsolved case here. Yeah, there it is, the bullpen. He's come down from his little judge seat over there, and he's thrown us the high profile case, and it's this JonBenét Ramsey child that got murdered back in the 90s. And they never found out who murdered her. There's all these things going on and all these things that nobody knows and inept cops and suspects. There's even a Santa Claus involved. There's even a
pedophile, a school teacher, a Santa Claus.
Yeah.
It's got the makings of a really good story.
Yeah.
It's a true story.
And then of course there's a ton of conspiracy involved in it. So we already know that's going to be a part that we can tackle. So I'm really looking forward to this because both Tom and I, we actually did our due diligence this time. For once, we were like, let's not phone this one in. Where we show up and one of us is like, did you read anything, dude? I read the Wikipedia.
And we have to do that thing. We have to do that thing where we hand it off to one another. All right, you go ahead and why don't you tell us the first one, and then I'll do. And then while you're reading, I'm real quick reading up on the rest of it. Okay, I'm ready. I can tell you about the next one.
And I always have to pretend that I'm not reading, and so I try to sound like I throw in little tidbits to sound like I'm not reading.
So
So JonBenét Ramsey.
I mean, I have a picture of JonBenét.
Yeah, let's
ever seen.
Yeah, let's have a look.
JonBenét Ramsey. She was the child who climbed into the gorilla exhibit at the Cincinnati Zoo.
Bless her heart.
Yeah, poor girl.
Bless her spiked mullet heart.
The funny thing about that story is we go to the Cincinnati Zoo a lot, and every time we pass by the gorilla exhibit, there's a statue of a gorilla with a baby gorilla or whatever next to it, and I always come up to it and I kiss my hand and I touch the gorilla on the head and I say, may Harambe rest in peace. I said, this is a monument to the failures of parents everywhere. This is a testament to to bad parenting. So
Yeah,
no,
that's
here's a picture of the child who climbed into the gorilla exhibit at the Cincinnati Zoo, JonBenét Ramsey, and many people. I mean, there are some people probably in the chat. I'm thinking Megabit probably never actually lived through this. He's probably too young to remember.
Oh, yeah. This is like Zach Morris era. This is like Saved by the Bell era, dude.
Yeah,
like,
I sincerely doubt that James was even. Well, he was alive, but he was. Well, gosh, he was actually about JonBenét's age at the time. He probably did it. He was probably.
She was born in 1990. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jameis, yeah, she's Jameis's age, huh? When was Jameis born? 91.
Yeah, 91.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was.
See, Jameis, I remember how old you are, motherfucker.
Why do you know that?
I don't know. Actually, it was just a really good guess.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you were right. I did give you enough clues.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this whole JonBenét Ramsey. Do you want to give us a rundown of kind of like just very basic, like what happened? Tell us what happened.
Okay, so
read the dossier.
The daughter gets This is I'll give you like the what do you call it? The summary, the brief summary from Detective V. I'm going to tell you. Basically, the daughter goes missing, right? And so they're freaking out and they're trying to figure out. They call the cops. The cops show up. They search the house. They can't find anything. They're freaking out. But oh no, they find a ransom note. Right? There's this ransom note, which we'll get back to that because that is really interesting. There's some interesting shit, and it's really long and weird and kind of like convoluted, like weird. Like you go, what the hell is this all about? But essentially, they're asking for a little over $100,000, saying, give us $100,000 and we'll return to your kid, basically. And we're gonna read the note later, so you also can hear how weird it is. And then they go, oh, so they're trying to figure out how to get the money together. The cops search the house, but during this process, there's like tons of they contaminate the scene, like tons of it. People are moving stuff, people are cleaning stuff, and I guess what happened, and this is where I was kind of confused, is essentially they went down to this basement to look, and nobody saw anything in there. But then they go back later, and they find JonBenét Ramsey dead in like behind a door or some shit. And so which is really sad. They find her and she's like tied up. She's got, what is it? Curtain cord wrapped around her and her mouth is duct taped.
Yeah,
nylon cord. Right. And so here's the worst part is and this is one of those things that it makes you wonder about man, there's so I love this thing because it makes you go, well, it could be them, but it couldn't be because this, and then there's logic, and we'll get into that. So the father goes down, John Ramsey. He picks up the daughter and brings, which is already what the fuck are you doing? You're contaminating the scene of a crime by picking her up and moving her that alone. That's what he does. He picks her up, moves her. So they discern the forensics and all that she had her head blunt force trauma to the head, and then she died by strangulation. And then, as you know, much as I don't like to talk about child vaginas, the forensics did try to find out if she was raped or anything, and they say that there was some damage to the vagina.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's possible, but there was no semen or anything, so who knows? And they did say that it looked like somebody cleaned it up with a wet wipe or something. So that's disgusting as that is, and cringeworthy as it is, that did happen.
Yeah, somebody popped a V.
Yeah, somebody popped. Is that what that is? Cleaning up a vagina with a wet wipe?
No, the previous stuff. So just for everybody's clarification, she was killed by strangulation and a skull fracture, like you said. This is the autopsy finding. There was undigested pineapple found in her stomach that she had eaten hours before she died.
Oh, yeah.
They found, then the only evidence that they found as far as items physical evidence was a paintbrush from Patsy Ramsey's what you call it, art kit or whatever, with a broken handle and a nylon cord that was used to form a garrote. Rope that was found by JonBenét's room, which didn't belong to anybody there. 2 sets of unknown footprints that they were never able to figure out. And then DNA samples found on the long johns and the panties, as well as the ransom note that was later found. But the funny thing about the underwear, and that's something to remember with the underwear, is actually one of the lawyers that was involved with OJ's case got involved, I guess, because he was like wanted to help or whatever. But he said, "Listen, you can't write anybody off as not a suspect based off of evidence like this, because there are often trace amounts of evidence, DNA, that is found on clothing that, especially specifically underwear, because he is what he used to prove it, when they're packaged from manufacturing. So he said to prove it, he brought a pack of panties or whatever that was unopened, opened it up, and had them test it for DNA samples, and they were able to find DNA samples of somebody who worked at the factory.
Right.
So all this time that they had this, and you'll see it throughout this case that we're working today, as if we're
we're working
on the case.
We're gonna solve it, I think.
If anyone can do it, it's us.
Yeah.
It's the Santa Claus. But he said you can't write anybody off because all these people got written off as suspects based off of DNA evidence of an unknown white male who his DNA was found on the underwear, but nobody since then to this day has popped up in the thing. So it's probably some law-abiding citizen who works at an underwear factory, doesn't even realize it, but he's the guy whose DNA is on file with the Ramsey murder. That was the evidence that was found in the situation, and all that stuff is going to come into play as we talk tonight. So just so that everybody knows, that's what was found at the scene of the crime. How did you want to handle this? Do you want to do the ransom note first? Because I can go ahead.
Let's read go ahead and read the ransom note, because I think this is worth discussion, because when I saw it, I was like, this is weird, man. This is like weird. And like, the parents were like prime suspects for a long time, but there are a lot of things that like my first instinct, and I'm going to give away a little bit, my first instinct was it's the parents. The parents did it. And, there's even that South Park where they put, like, remember Butters' parents try to kill him? And one of our Butters' parents try to kill him, and then they end up hanging out with the Ramseys and OJ, and they're all like, yeah, it was like he disappeared, and like they're all like doing these like weird. So my instinct it was immediately the parents. But there were a lot of things that made me go, well, maybe that wasn't that. Like, are they really that dumb, or are they really that smart? Like maybe it wasn't them, because here are things that like are kind of classic like parent moves. And let's go ahead and just read. You read the thing, and then we'll discuss that.
All right. By the way, in the chat, Lurkio says Raymond Chandler wrote that the easiest murders to solve are the ones where the murderer tried to get cute, but the hardest are the spur of the moment ones. Now that makes sense, but my thing that I'm curious about here is, when you say Raymond Chandler, who are you referring to? Raymond Chandler, who was he? Because I don't recognize I recognize the name, but I think for a different reason. He was actually the Sergeant Major of the Army for a while. He was my first squadron Sergeant Major. So anyways, let's move on. If you want to talk about that in the chat while I read this, we can do that. So let me make sure that the volume isn't going to be too loud. I don't want it to be.
He was a writer, by the way. He was a writer. Raymond
a writer.
Chandler.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a writer.
There we go.
It wrote detective mysteries.
Well, then there we go. That mystery.
I think he did some movies too. I think he wrote some screenplays too. I don't. It's a long time ago.
That certainly makes sense, though. That the easiest ones are the ones where they, they try to do fun stuff with it, and then the ones that spur of the moment. Chances are they're not going to leave any. It's not, it's because it's so not orchestrated or whatever. There's less chance of it to happen. So the ransom note reads something like this: Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want to see her, or see 1990. If you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. When you get home.
Who uses that word?
I don't know, ransom writers, I guess.
Gaylord.
When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier delivery pickup of your daughter. How many times can you say early in
that's
sentence? A lot. Any deviation from my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The two gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions, you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny, as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. You are a good Southern common sense. Use that good Southern common sense of yours. It is up to you now, John. John.
No. Read the signature. Read the signature.
Oh, I'm sorry. Victory. SBTC.
Yeah, because that's important. Like, we have to speculate. You know what's funny about that is he says, "Don't try to grow a brain, John." That's something out of a movie. Like, that's like a line from a movie. Like, that's where he heard that. So this ransom note, like, it's kind of bewildering. Like, there's a lot of stuff that, like, they say, okay, like John, the guy, the dad, right? Which let's real quick, JonBenét Ramsey. Her name is kind of a mashup of like her dad's name and like her mom's name. Like, why would you name your daughter John? Like, what an asshole thing to do.
Yeah, the dad's name is like JonBenét Ramsey, right? Yeah. So it's like JonBenét. So yeah. It's one way to name your, like, why wouldn't he name his elder son after himself? Instead he's like, whoops, I should have done that. Let me name our daughter after him.
What an asshole. But there's a lot of things that this is weird, right? The dad said that the number was the exact amount of his Christmas bonus from last year, right? John Ramsey. And so he said whoever it was has to know that's that knows that about him, so it had to be somebody close to him, right? So that's kind of like an interesting logic. The other things that get me too are the signature what is it?
SBTC.
What can you even gather that is? Like, what is that?
We understand that there was 2 sets of footprints, right? And as we'll talk about later, some of the suspects, one of them that admitted to it, said that he didn't work alone. There were others that were involved, and so we can assume reasonably, if we ignore the family altogether and we assume it was somebody else outside, and that it was more than one person, and in fact there are 2 people watching the kid, and like one person who's like the mastermind or whatever, like maybe it was 2 people's initials. You know what I mean? Maybe it's like a team, and their names are, Stan Bradley and.
But they also said, like, okay, then let's go back to the beginning of the letter or the ransom note. They said they're from like another country. What did they say?
It was
small
like foreign faction. Yeah.
Yeah. So that maybe it was like the initials of their faction or something. Like what didn't the cops think to look at that? Did they go? So they said this is like information they give away, but all the stuff about that, it's confusing to me. And like the weirdest part about it is that they got the money together and got ready and like did everything they said, and nobody ever showed up. Nobody ever showed up to take the money. The money was never taken. Nothing, like nothing. Nobody ever did anything. So that kind of like raises a ton of questions. Like, why wouldn't these guys want their money after that? Like, even if they killed her, they would still want to get the money, right? This is like, they just did not, they did that for no reason, right? So, like, you have these, like, and these hypothetical kidnappers, right? That kidnap JonBenét Ramsey and they go, okay, give us this money. And then, like, you did all this stuff and they go, oh, maybe they even botched it and accidentally killed her. And they go, well, we don't want to get nothing for having to do all this work, so let's at least still try to get the money, right? Like that to me is criminal logic. Like you're still going to get something out of this because you didn't, like even a normal person would go, I got to do something, I got to get something out of this.
Right.
So in the end, they did all this work and they didn't even get anything out of it. Like that to me goes, what the fuck? And so now you've got and like the biggest thing when all this happened was everybody's going, look at the parents, indict the parents, right? It's got to be them. And like there's a good case against them, although it was all thrown out because everybody says there's no way it could be them. And there's all these like even like old FBI agents that like, you know, came out of retirement to help out
right.
with the case. And they're going, it's no way it's the parents, right? And like, do you really trust that? Or you just go, I don't know, like what was the motive, right? That's the first thing. What was the motive? And so my first logic is like, okay, this whole like, what do we know about JonBenét Ramsey, right? She's a pageant girl, right? She's
right.
like notable. She's like a notable pageant girl. She's won a few things, which means like by default, and like this is even on the Wikipedia, they say the mom is a pageant mother, right? They call her the pageant mother, which means she's probably a little abrasive to the daughter in those situations. Although the son testified that the parents were always nice, and a lot of people say like there's no way like the parents, they had a good like family. There was no, people didn't get, you know, beat or anything like that. And like one of the theories was that the mom killed her because she got mad and like slapped her for like bedwetting or something, and then like choked her out or whatever. But that was like kind of discounted because the son, right, Burke or whatever, he said they were never hurt. Their parents weren't like that. So I don't know that. And like, what do we really know about the parents and like what would their motive be? Like they were probably making money off of her doing this stuff, right? Being a pageant girl. So, you know, which let's be honest, like that stuff is creepy as shit, dude. Like putting your your child like your child is this like, it's weird, man. Like that, and that was another thing that they said, and I know we're going way already over there, but that was another thing they said, your daughter is this pageant, the authorities, your daughter is this pageant girl, you're gonna attract pedophiles.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's gonna happen, right?
So well, you asked what do we know about the parents? Well, I suppose we could talk a little bit about the parents and what the parents perhaps did or how they were cleared of it.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd love to know that.
Well, I have some notes here.
Okay.
So Patsy Ramsey is the mother. She's like number one, numero uno suspect on every list that you look up. It's always Patsy Ramsey is the first one. Yeah. Here's the thing. She's the one who found the note, right? She found the ransom note. She was going down in the middle of the night. She was going down into the first floor, finds the ransom note on the stairs. Now, the interesting thing about the ransom note is it was written on her stationery with her pen. And then furthermore, they actually had somebody in 2000, it must have been like in the early 2000s, a handwriting analyst actually looked at the ransom note and then like hundreds of samples of Patsy Ramsey's, just some of her stuff, so just to look for samples, and was able to find 200 similarities in the writing of the ransom note and the 100 samples of Patsy Ramsey's penmanship. So she was able to find all these similarities. And I mean, I looked at some of them and it was like some real weird stuff. Like the C was written kind of like the Chicago C, like the Chicago Bears, Chicago Bulls, Chicago Cubs, like that C that they have. It looks just like that, very pointed at the far left side. The A is written a certain way, and it was very like the first page is very deliberately written a certain way, like they were trying to mask their handwriting. And then as the pages go along, there's 2.5 pages, they start to kind of like loosen up a little bit, and it got even more like her writing at that point. So the lady's name was Sina Wong. racist name, by the way, right? Chinese lady. She's the one who did the handwriting analysis, and she says that in her opinion, the mom definitely wrote the letter. Whether or not she murdered the kid or not, she definitely wrote the letter. The handwriting, but it came out the handwriting was inconclusive. And then during the interrogations, Patsy was actually like the weirdest one. Like everybody else that they interrogated was like fairly normal by the detectives or whatever, their opinions. They said they were all very normal, but Patsy Ramsey was like the most. It was her, because she was also a pageant queen, right?
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so her interrogations were just, the detectives called them performances, really, like very much performance like, as if she were in the pageant still, and she knew what questions to answer, what ones not to answer. She was very combative and dramatic. She was very consistent with her answers, like she was well rehearsed. But and then the other thing that was obvious was, or what you had said previously, was about the number being the same amount that John had gotten for his Christmas bonus.
Right.
Obviously, she would have known that,
Yeah.
Couples discuss finances, so she would have known that. The garrote was made out of one of her paintbrushes, and just like some nylon rope that was by, but it was one of her paintbrushes. So, I mean, she knew where it was. But yeah, the DNA, like we talked about, the only reason that she got cleared, this is really the only reason she got cleared, is because of that DNA evidence that was on JonBenét's panties and long johns, and under her fingernails, cleared everybody in the house of the murder. And that wasn't even nobody bothered to look into any of that until 3 years later. So for 3 years, they were like the prime suspect of this and had to deal with all that stuff. And even to this day, that DNA testing, like I said, has not popped up anything. Let's see. And then the dad was a lot easier, because he was cleared immediately of the handwriting. So the ransom note, nobody suspected him of doing that. They cleared him right away. So this is the weird thing about the dad, and what kind of like makes me wonder if perhaps, and I mean, we could sit here and talk about how the mom and the dad worked as a team, and I think that'll come up later. She wrote the ransom letter, the dad did the dirty work or whatever. The thing was, he was sitting there, and after the ransom call didn't happen at 10 o'clock, between 8 and 10 o'clock, all the cops left, because they were like, well, if they're watching, we'll leave, and maybe they'll come, or maybe they'll call at that point. We'll just leave whatever behind. And they left one detective behind. And the detective told him, hey man, like, and this was weird, because the parents didn't do anything when the time lapsed. Like, they didn't freak out. They weren't like, well, what are we going to do? Our kid, nope, they didn't call. How are we going to find our kid? Like, they didn't freak out or anything. They were just like, no, okay, 10 o'clock. No, we called. All right, cool. And they thought that was weird. But then the detective, I guess, was starting to speculate that perhaps it was the dad, or perhaps it was the parents. And he said, hey man, go look for anything in the house that's out of place. And at this point, they've already combed through the house, right?
Yeah.
And he said, go look for anything that's out of place, or something that maybe, like, just kind of walk through the house, and if you see anything out of place. The first place he goes is to the wine cellar. And that's right where he finds the body, right? Like,
right.
First things first. And that was, for whatever reason, his first place that he decided to look. And then, after they discovered the body, the detective, that same detective, overheard the dad making travel arrangements to fly to Atlanta, right, from Colorado.
Yeah, that's weird.
So that was another thing that the detective, he was kind of like confirming in his mind that, oh, it was the parents then, for sure. But again, there was never any proof that could link them to it, and it was all circumstantial. And then the son, somebody actually said it in the chat earlier that it was probably the son, and they've been saying it for years. The son.
Well, before you get into that, there was a bunch of because you said the top one was the mom, but a lot of the and I read this on the Wikipedia, a lot of the documentaries, like the one on CNN, and then there was like another one, they basically said it was the son, and which was like Like that's not what like they didn't rule that, like they're still, unsolved, right? So the son has like huge court cases for slander and like libel and all that, and like has made some serious money from the,
Mm-hmm.
like last year one of the cases just closed out of court, and it was something like 250 million that
Yeah.
he got from like CNN, like fucking CNN, dude. Which
Well,
fuck CNN, but I mean, like, ugh.
when
So
you
I just
win,
wanted to add that.
it's not, and that's what's funny that Nick Sandman kid from Covington, actually just up the road from here, he's making all sorts of money by going from all the different news agencies that were slandering him over that whole thing where he wore like his "Make America Great Again" hat at the Capitol,
Right,
and
right,
like
right, right.
that Indian guy was like beating his drum in his face or whatever, and then turns out the dude was a stolen valor deserter from never served in Vietnam, and he's like, "But I'm just a lowly old Vietnam veteran." But then like everybody took his side. Turns out Nick Sandman was in the right. So moving on to the brother,
Yeah, yeah.
there's a strong case for the brother that it was the
Hmm.
brother. And here's the theory, because there was a bowl of pineapples on the table, right?
Right.
And she was found with pineapples in her stomach when she was, or during the autopsy. His fingerprints were on the bowl and the spoon, so it was probably his. This is the theory, that it was his snack, his bedtime snack, and she was eating it. He clobbered her with a flashlight, which there was no evidence on. It was clearly wiped down or whatever, but it was consistent with the head trauma. And then there was a mark on her body that was exactly the same size and shape of the edge of one of his his train tracks from one of his toys or whatever, as if he was like poking her, trying to get a reaction, like, "Hey, are you still alive? Are you awake?" But again, he was totally dismissed as a suspect because of the DNA evidence. Now, this is kind of where I guess we can get into talking
Mm.
about, was it the family working together?
Yeah, right.
Because they had all
Yeah,
sorts of time. I mean, it was like what, 4 hours? I mean,
yeah.
they really had all the time in the world. It could, because I think when they projected she had been dead for 4 hours uh, before the mom called or something. Anyways, but there was enough time to where they could have cleaned up the entire scene and gotten rid
Hmm.
of everything, wiped everything down, uh, changed her out of her clothes. And that's the thing with when it's your own kid, is like,
Yeah,
if your fingerprints are found on anything, it's like, well, yeah, I'm her dad. Of course I got her ready for bed. Or
yeah,
I fed her bedtime snack, or I got this ready for her, or whatever. Or yeah, of course my fingerprints are on it because it's mine.
right.
Like it's in my house.
Yeah.
And your footprints everywhere. Yeah, I was here because this is my wine cellar. So it's very easy to get away with that sort of stuff when it's your own house, your own kid, your own stuff that you bought for them, your own food. And if it was in fact the flashlight that did it, the kid would obviously be like, "Well, hey, mom," because the kid was like 9 at the time, I think.
Hmm.
The kid could have been like, "Hey, mom, so here's the deal. JonBenét, or whatever he called her, Sissy or John or whatever. I don't know what. I can't imagine like everybody was walking around the house like, well, JonBenét all the time. They probably had some kind of clever nickname for her. But he could have been like, well, look, here's what happened, mom. I hit her on the head with the flashlight and she's not responding or whatever. And then whatever the motive was for the mom to choke her out or whatever. And then of course the dad comes along, and maybe the dad didn't even know anything about it to begin with. And like there's
Yeah,
so many variables where like
yeah.
that particular theory can carry so much weight just based off what we know for a fact.
And it just seems like a movie thing, right? Like like something you've seen in a movie, right? Like the kid kills the accidentally kills the sister. The mom doesn't want the kid going to jail. So it's a loving family, right? So they're trying to figure out what to do, and like they all, like just like in that Butters episode where they're like, we don't want anything bad to happen and we don't want to go to jail, so they cover it all up for the kid, because they don't want their other kid to, whatever, and so they cover it up, and like it makes sense if all three of them work together like that, right? Like that's kind of a good theory right there. Like, you know, of course, there's no way to substantiate it because all the evidence is gone, and there's like none of it, right? Like nothing. They have nothing.
Right. And what's funny too is like, well, it's not funny. It's tragic. The if you lose a kid and it's the fault of the other kid and the police aren't involved yet or nobody else knows, you're not going to want to lose both kids, because that's what would happen, is the kid would be taken away. If he killed the other kid, yeah, that kid's going to be taken away. So the parents are going to lose both kids. So at this point,
Yeah, yeah,
they're like, well, you know, we got to protect our son because he's all we have left at this point, or that's all we have left now. And then, so I mean, I get it. I'm not saying I approve.
Okay,
of
let's
that
let's do a hypothetical.
Oh,
What
boy.
would you do if one of your kids, like what's your middle, Dayton, right? What if Dayton hit Sterling in the head with a flashlight and then strangled him? What would you do? And I know this is effed up, so
Yeah, it's a
if
tough
you don't
one.
if you don't feel like doing this scenario,
Well, for the sake of the show, I feel like I have to answer it.
okay. So if this happened, right? Like that happened,
Would I be the Ramsey family?
Yeah, would you be the
would I
Ramsey
be
family?
that? Man, that's a tough.
Yeah, right. The only
So
way to
now I'm
really
kinda
know.
like, I'm kind of like in the position where I'm like, well, maybe they did do it, but at the same time, I forgive them. You know, like,
Right?
without them
Like, okay, and
asking.
that's what I was getting at, where
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff about the murder makes you go, oh, I don't know. Like the dad finding the daughter, like the dad finding JonBenét, like my first instinct was, oh, he knew where she was, and so he had to contaminate the scene so that they couldn't make him a suspect. Or he was so distraught by finding his daughter dead that he instantly picked her up to feel that remorse and go, oh my God, like what would you do? Like it's kind of like an innate response, right? Like I don't have kids, I don't know, but I feel like that's what you would do. You go, oh my God, like in the movies, right? They hold him in their arms and they cry, right? And that seems like I imagine that in my logic, and of course, like the pitchant for movies, right? I go. That's what happened. Is he had this moment of like immense sadness, and he wanted to grip his daughter and cry out to God or whatever, and that's what he did, and not realizing that he contaminated the scene, and now all this stuff, you know, and so that instance, I go, well, did he do that, or was he really smart enough to know I need to pick her up and contaminate the scene? So that, right? And then with the mom, I go, okay, yeah, she could have done all these things, covered it up, she could have done all that, but JonBenét Ramsey was her like prize.
Right.
Like think about it, like literally, like not figuratively her prize, like literally this girl was her trophy. And like that's like why would you get rid of that for any reason? What motive? Like she's making her money, she's getting her exposure, she's making her look good. She's giving her like her life purpose because she's able to like tote her around, right? But like and then there's like, and of course we'll get into that later with the conspiracy stuff, but there's a lot of things that like make you go, well, this could be a lot darker than even that, right? So let's go over some of the others so we can get to that, because there's so much to talk about on this. You know, like we're gonna hit our 2 hours so quick, so let's go over the next suspects. Who else you got?
All right, who do we have? Let's see here. Man, that's something to think about for sure.
Yeah, right.
Was he thinking, you know, what have I done? That too, like it was not even
Yeah.
like remorse, like he's just now discovering his child for the first time dead, or maybe
Yeah.
he's like they went through the motions because he's like, hey, this is what we have to do in the moment.
Oh, yeah,
and then
yeah.
later he's like, what have I done?
Yeah.
I'm part of this now, like, and I've done this to my own daughter.
Yeah, the catharsis, right?
Yeah.
It just happened like at that moment, right?
Oh, you know, this whole time I've not been putting up the pictures of the suspects, and I have them. I have them here. Oh, by the way, here you go, folks. Here's the parents or whatever.
Who admittedly, like you have to kind of admit when you see them, they do kind of look like sleazy.
Yeah.
for lack of a better word. And like if you see the way they like if you can find the picture of the way that they're drawn in that South Park episode, they make them look even more sleazy. But yeah, him then the brother, right?
Yeah, and then we've got Elijah Wood here.
He does kind of look like he does look like Elijah Wood. I was gonna say he does kind of, but he looks pretty sleazy. They all kind of have that like Children of the Corn look, huh? Like
Yeah, something. They look
yeah,
they look untrustworthy for sure.
yeah, I'll agree with that. Yeah.
Like if you saw, like you always say, like there are some people you can just look at and you know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, here's actually the next suspect, Gary Oliva. He was the town drifter, is what they refer to him as. He was a known sex offender, known convicted pedophile who lived a few blocks away at the time. Right. When it happened, and I'll try to do it in the timeline. I have it written kind of funky.
Right.
But I'll try to do it in the timeline. He lived just a few blocks away from them at the time. And then the day after the murder, one of his high school friends came forward, and this is after like years and years, I guess. He came out and said the day after the murder, he called this dude, Gary, he called his friend and said that he hurt a little girl. Quote, I heard a little girl. And then he said, where? He asked him where, and he said, in Boulder, Colorado. And at the time, like, that was the only person who had, like, been, that was, like, the only case that was, happening in Boulder, Colorado. And then after that, he actually choked his mom out with a telephone cord. Now, again, for you young guys, there used to be cords on telephones.
Yeah,
he strangled his mom with a telephone cord using the same method, like the same knots and then the same garrote style to choke his mom out. And then he was arrested in 2000, the year 2000, 4 years later, for drug charges. And he had a stun gun on him, there was some evidence that a stun gun was used on JonBenét prior to her dying. And he had a stun gun on him at the time, and he had a magazine cutout of JonBenét Ramsey in his backpack. So,
that's weird.
What do you think about that?
That's creepy as shit. Well, it's starting to paint pictures for me, right? Like there's like him being a suspect brings me back to the parents, and I'll tell you why. Because it starts to make me wonder if these people are all connected. Like maybe the parents hired him to do something, right? And somehow he was involved too. And so maybe he did murder her, but it was because of something else. And like we're slowly getting towards the conspiracy, right? Which is the best part, the best part about it. So I think it's a possibility, right? And a lot of them, there are like a couple where you go, no, there's no way. But then there's a few where you go, right?
I tried to capture as much as possible, like in those situations where, they were suspects for one reason or another. But like I tried to capture all the extra stuff that makes it more conspiracy-y. Like for instance, this next guy, he's a personal favorite of mine, Michael Helgoth. All right, this is for whatever reason the only good picture of him.
Sweet mullet, bro.
Yeah. He puts JonBenét Ramsey here to shame with his mullet.
Yeah, he's got the hillbilly mullet variant with the part in the middle and the business in the back.
Is well done, and it's lined up neatly.
Yeah.
But this guy, he was allegedly in a property dispute with that involved the Ramseys, so that kind of tied him to the family. And when he was supposedly, and this is a friend came forward later and talked about how this dude had come to him, and he was talking about how he was going to get $118,000. He didn't say how he was going to get it. He just said that he was waiting on a payout of $118,000. And the dude thought it was weird, but at the same time, he was like, well, maybe it has to do with the property dispute. Maybe it has to do with his business. Maybe it has to do with something. Maybe he's selling the business. I don't know. Like, he didn't think anything of it. But then as the news broke that the ransom note requested $118,000, this dude finally kind of came forward. And I think that was one of the things that they actually held off. Because, I don't know if you know this, but when there's a police investigation that's very publicized, like this one was, what they do as the police officers who are in charge of the case and anybody who speaks to the public or to the media, they only release certain information, and they leave out certain very like specific details. And that's so if they're interviewing somebody and somebody drops one of those pieces of knowledge, like they'll say a ransom was requested, blah 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 blah, and then if they're interrogating somebody, they'll say, well, there was a ransom requested, do you have any idea anything about that? And they're like, well, I never requested $118,000.
Yeah, well, we didn't say it. Yeah.
But they do that
Yeah,
sort of
classic.
stuff.
Yeah, that's a classic maneuver. It's like tricking them into giving you information that they didn't give out yet.
Right.
Well, it's always in the movies. They go, well, the public doesn't know about that. How do you know about it? Yeah. And then they do.
That's what this dude, he said that he was waiting on $118,000. And then the dude, when he found out that that was the amount from the ransom note, he went to the police. At that point, it was too late, because what happened with this guy, let me bounce back here. What happened with this guy, Michael Helgoth, was there was as the case progressed, finally one of the police chiefs or one of the investigators or U.S. Marshals, whoever, because there was like everybody involved. FBI,
yeah, everybody. Yeah, I was like,
they came on they were on the news or on a press conference, and they said, hey, the list of suspects is getting narrower. Like, we're narrowing it down, and pretty soon the only suspect that's going to be left on that list is you. And then we're going to come find you, and you're going to go to jail, whatever. When that press conference aired on TV, just a few hours later, this dude had committed suicide. They went and they found him. He had committed suicide, supposedly. Now, what's fun about this one is, and how it becomes a conspiracy, is when they went to investigate the scene of the suicide, they found he was lying down. I'll try to recreate it. He was lying down with his arms up like this on the ground, and his head tilted to the side. And the gun was under his right arm, just lying on the ground, and on his right side. The bullet hole was on his left side, in his torso, like up from underneath the ribs, and then it left out the right side of his body. So, and this guy was right-handed. So he would have had to reach around and shoot himself up through the torso to commit suicide. From the left side, which doesn't make sense.
Who does that? Who commits suicide that way, right?
To make it worse and more difficult to buy into it being a suicide, there was no suicide note, by the way. It was determined to be a suicide for some reason. There was also a pillow that he had used to muffle the sound of the gun. So he not only did he reach around to shoot himself, he had a pillow there to muffle the sound of him shooting himself.
Which, didn't they myth bust that? Didn't they myth bust that? Like, that doesn't actually work. It doesn't really
muffling with the pillow.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't watch Mythbusters because, again, they're another example of people who are in a position of trust to dispel rumors and dispel and fact check, who have been bought and paid for by political interests. But go ahead, V. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, well, it's interesting, this Helgoth guy, because he's connected to the parents too, right? Like, and now we're like, you're finding this connection to all these people, and it's the scope is broadening, and the conspiracy gets deeper, right? Like, it's what I love about this one is you're already going, wait a second, like this, I don't know, like this is weird. So, like, there's no denying this, and obviously you can deny it and say, well, it's, there's no proof or whatever. But I mean, come on,
dude.
Yeah, it's not fucking paranormal. Yeah, this guy was suicided, right? He wasn't. Right. He didn't fucking commit suicide. Somebody fucking killed him, right? And they weren't very good at it because they shot him in the ribs. Like, who does that? So weird, right? Weird. And it's one of those things where you go, well, if he had no connection to the Ramseys, then you go, oh, that's weird. But he did. And so now you're going, what's going on here? What's the reason why someone gets silenced, right?
Yeah.
Is they want to be silenced. They want him to be silenced. So who else we got?
He's one of those situations where I think maybe he was involved and somebody had to get rid of him because he was a loose end. So
yeah, exactly.
I think he probably had something to do with it. I don't know if he was the actual guy to choke her out or what or whatever, but yeah, he had to have had something to do with it. I'm inclined to believe that he had something to do with it.
Right.
The next suspect is this one. Let me see here. John Mark Carr, a school teacher from Colorado. I don't know where he's from.
This is the one that they found in Thailand, right? Or Thailand?
Spoiler alert, V.
Oh yeah, my bad.
John Mark Carr. Yeah, he was an elementary school teacher and a divorced father. He had nothing to do with anything. Like, he wasn't even like, nobody would have suspected him in a million years because he was like not a name that was known to anybody at the time. But he confessed to the JonBenét Ramsey murder. And this is in like 2006. He confessed to it. He had started, there was a professor in the University of Colorado who was doing a documentary on the JonBenét Ramsey murder. And this guy found out about it and he started emailing him asking about it. And over the years, over 4 years actually, he finally like confessed in like great detail to all the stuff that he did in like in great sexual graphic detail what happened that night. And when this dude finally went to the police or whatever, and he said then the police tracked him down. It wasn't just the police, it was like Interpol, the British police, the U.S. Marshals, Department of Homeland Security at large. Like they all were able to finally track him down, and he was in Bangkok, hilariously enough, where he was hiding over some child pornography charges that he was facing. So this dude, like when they got the warrant and everything and went and found all of his stuff, they found that he had diary entries written as if he were writing them from the scene of the crime when he murdered JonBenét. And he knew specific things about the family that the police and no one else even knew. Like it was like the mother-in-law's nickname or something. And then he used like a lot of his speaking was very similar to his speaking and writing was very similar to that of the ransom note. And he said that he didn't work alone, which would explain the 2 sets of footprints, and it would certainly help. The funny thing about this guy is that he's actually now living in the Pacific Northwest as a woman. That's him right there.
So he's a she now.
Yeah, he's living a new identity. He wasn't actually charged for any of the JonBenét stuff because they knew within 18 hours that this dude hadn't done it. They just did some like real quick routine checking around, and they were able to find somebody who could provide pictures of him in Georgia the time of the JonBenét Ramsey murder. So they immediately wrote him off, and they were like, no, this is a weirdo who's who
weirdo is right.
Attention.
Yeah, that's there's no denying that.
And that just furthers our point that people who are transgender are typically like oddballs or whatever.
Yeah, weirdos.
Like it's never like a normal person who's like, yeah, I'm totally a functioning member of society. It's always like, yeah, I murdered JonBenét Ramsey, and here's the graphic sexual details of how I did it in a diary that I wrote from the scene of the crime, as if I was at the scene of the crime, and I just keep them, I just write them still. It's like fun fan fiction or whatever. But yeah, that was that guy. What do you think about that guy, V?
I just think he was weird. I think he was just one of the. It's like one of those what do you call it? Fame grabs, right? He was just trying to get the information, like to get people to think he was cool, or so. I don't know why
like,
anybody
who does that.
Yeah,
it's like people will respect me now. I'm a pedophile.
Yeah,
I killed JonBenét.
Well, maybe he was like notable in the pedophile realm. Like he was. So he wanted people that are other pedophiles to appreciate that he
wanted to gain some notoriety. He
banged the sweet young tale of JonBenét.
V. Speaking of, actually, we have a new shirt that's available right now. I don't have a picture of it here on the screen, but if you go to our Redbubble, you'll find that we now have our it's Dangerous Business Dealing in Young Tail t-shirt available for your it's the design is available now, and we encourage you to go take a look at it. My wife asked me, she said, "So did anybody buy your Wayfair shirt?" And I said, "Nope, and I don't reckon that they ever will." I don't blame them either for never wanting to buy that shirt. It's certainly one of those shirts that's going to remain unpopular, I think, just because of the word young tail on it.
Yeah.
I think is going to be enough to discourage anyone from picking it up.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Mike, I saw that you did the little laughing face.
Yeah.
And then you retracted it. So our next suspect, this is like who I think of when people say, "Okay, Karen," or when they talk about Karens or whatever.
Definitely
exactly who I think of. But her name is Linda, which is actually kind of like a Karen name too.
Yeah, totally.
She was the housekeeper of the Ramseys. She was like deep in debt, and she had asked the Ramseys for a loan, and they denied her. The reasons why she was kind of and that has to do with the $118,000 ransom that was picked or whatever. And she would have probably known too that he was going to get that payout just based off of mail that was left around the house, or maybe the check lying around or whatever. But then she also had a key to the house. She knew the family schedule. She knew the family's home. She was trusted by JonBenét, and she didn't have an alibi, which was extremely inconvenient. Like at the beginning of Shawshank Redemption, when he's like, "Don't you think it's a little inconvenient that we combed that river for days and weren't able to find it?" And he said, "Since I'm not guilty of this crime, I find it decidedly inconvenient that the gun was never found." But yeah, so inconveniently for her, her husband had slept on the couch that night, and she supposedly slept in bed all alone, so there was no alibi whatsoever. Fortunately for her, though, all the evidence was circumstantial at best and was never actually charged or formally accused, for that matter. Here's the one, V, that I know you're excited about, and here's actually the last suspect that I have. This gentleman right here. This is not a real picture of him. I found the creepiest one that I could find.
That is a creepy ass Santa right there.
Tell us
what's
about
his real
Santa.
name? What was the guy's real name?
Oh, the real name is Bill McReynolds, which is
and
he was the
local Santa, right?
Yeah. What do you know about that guy? Do you know anything about him, or do you just want me to read off my notes?
No, read off the notes. I just know that he was a suspect.
Oh yeah, he supposedly, and this is based off of people who saw him interacting, he paid way too much attention to JonBenét, like a lot. He was actually at the house there 2 days prior, had arranged a special secret visit from Santa on Christmas Eve. When he was as far as connections to the family, when he was going in for open heart surgery, JonBenét Ramsey actually brought him a gift at the hospital, which is really sweet. It's like a little vial of glitter from her collection, or her secret stash of glitter. And when he always carried it on him, and then when he died, when he told his wife that when he died, he wanted the glitter mixed in with his ashes. All that's pretty weird, right?
Yeah,
it's not enough for me to be like, well, yeah, he clearly murdered her. That's just like old man stuff, like an old. If you've ever known like an old guy who plays Santa, like that's pretty normal stuff. You just love kids, but his own daughter was kidnapped 22 years earlier. And his wife actually wrote a story about a little girl who was sexually assaulted and murdered in a basement. So
that's weird.
Again, circumstantial, but at the same time, it's definitely worth bringing up. Where
it seems like too much of a coincidence, too.
Yeah. So that was the Santa. What else do we got? V? What else do you know about this situation that you'd like to share?
Well, I based on all the information that we have now about all the suspects, I think there's a strong case that all of them are connected. So, with the exception of like the Santa and
Well,
And
why
the,
not?
the weirdo out in Bangkok that became a she. I think there's a connection between a lot of these people, and like, and it's speculative, of course, but like I think it's strange. It makes you wonder, like, how are all these people connected, and is it all like, were they all involved somehow? Like, I don't know, right? And like my
Santa was the trigger man who killed the
yeah,
other guy.
well, it all goes into some. Yeah, that's interesting. That's see, that's an interesting theory. But it all goes to me like all of this goes to the conspiracy, and like, and I'm excited to talk about that. So I think we should jump into like the conspiracies now because this is all it's all connected. I think, and
Oh,
like
you mean
my
like the conspiracies about her, the ones that we talked about earlier, about her possibly still being alive, or
no, not
Maxwell
that one.
Giselle? Are we ready to talk
Maxwell,
about them
Ghislaine.
yet?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Oh boy. Okay,
Yeah,
let
let's
me
do it.
go ahead and get them pulled up here. I forgot to.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about the other one. Is she still alive?
Sure,
one after.
sure.
Yeah.
So here's the one we all know about Ghislaine Maxwell, right? She just got
Ghislaine.
arrested,
Yeah.
and she was Jeffrey Epstein's madam, and she was the one who would collect little girls and little boys, I guess. Let's not discriminate. Like it's a bathroom at a restaurant or something.
Yeah, that's
right. You can
Out of
see in
Rubio's.
this is the day that JonBenét died. This is the last day of her being alive. This photo was taken. And you can see right there over her shoulder, who's that look like in the background there?
It looks like a Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like this lady, right?
Yeah,
Like a younger version of this lady.
sure does.
So the theory is that, and it's not a very good theory. It's not one that that holds a lot of water as far as I'm concerned. However, it's worth mentioning that a woman closely resembles alleged Epstein procurer Ghislaine Maxwell is seen in the background of what is purported to be the last image of Ramsey alive. That's not true. I have one that's taken later, and I'll show it to you in a little bit. The theory has also received a great deal of traction on TikTok, where the image supposedly showing Maxwell in the background was sometimes shared with the hashtag Pizzagate. The theory was given further credence when internet detectives sleuthed that Maxwell and the Ramsey family were both repped by the same law firm, the Denver-based firm Haddon, Morgan, and Freeman, though by different lawyers, and more than 20 years apart. They've also represented other reputable characters like Harvey Weinstein and Charlie Sheen, just for clarification. And then Snopes actually says, and we know Snopes to be the beacon of truth and and trustworthiness, but it obviously goes without saying that considering there's absolutely zero evidence that Maxwell and the Ramseys knew each other, it's highly doubtful the woman behind Ramsey is Ghislaine Maxwell. It's far more likely she's just some dark-haired lady who happens to look a little bit like her from the side at the exact moment that photo was taken. So, and that's like that's the thing about Snopes, is when it's something like that, they don't ever like have any definitive like, no, listen, we actually talked to Ghislaine Maxwell and she was able to provide us. This is what a journalist should do, right?
Yeah.
They'd be like, where were you on this day? Like, we know when this photo was taken. Where were you? Can you prove it? And if she could say, well, here's my passport. It shows that I was in Chechnya at the time. And that's something that I could bite down on and be like, all right, Snopes, you win this round because I can't fight.
But they just go, nah, she wasn't there.
They're like, it's probably not her. It's probably just some dark-haired lady.
There's no like definitive. It's just like,
right.
nah, right. So this stuff with Ghislaine, like, like you can discount it and go, okay, she wasn't there. And it's like you said, it's kind of like reaching. It's like a stretch, but it does raise a lot of questions about everything. And now, and I'm going to get into my theory here about all of it and like what I've gathered. Okay, so like get the bullpen. Let's call
are we there already? Oh,
yeah, let's call the captain down.
Well, the thing is, we're not actually going to the bullpen today. Since this is an active case, we're on the scene.
Oh, there we are.
That's at the Ramseys. There's me on the left.
Yeah. I was gonna say you're the fat guy this time because I'm.
Well, that's what I just said that I'm the fat guy. I took it from you. I took the wind out of your sails. I'm the fat guy on the left that looks like Artie Lang.
Yeah, it does. It's like a Mexican Artie Lang. Yeah, it's funny. The other guy looks like Lloyd Christmas a little bit.
He looks like Jim Carrey on Me, Myself, and Irene. Remember when he
Yeah.
was a state trooper?
My favorite part is when he gets tased by that dude, and he's like, "You gonna pick up that cigarette butt?" And then he comes at them all, and they do the slow mo when he's punching the air, and the guy just tases. It's like my favorite scene in that whole movie. So, okay, Detective Tom, this is what I think. I think all of this is connected. And although this is Ghislaine Maxwell thing is a stretch, I don't think the concept of it is that far-fetched. Now, this, like, let's examine it as a whole, right?
What's funny is, like, it's 1996, and I'm
Yeah.
like, Ghislaine who? Like,
Yeah.
nobody knows who that is.
Yeah, Ghislaine. Yeah, so
you're the crazy
so this
conspiracy theorist guy who's like, no, Ghislaine, I'm from the
Yeah.
future. She's a big deal in 2020, believe me.
You'll trust me, yeah. So look, this whole, like, the thing that, like, right away to me is like a miss, what do you call it, like a not as addressed subject is the fact that JonBenét is a pageant, like, winner. She's like a pageant winner. So I think that's significant, right? Like, that makes her important. Now let's connect that to what we know now about Wayfair and, like, these weird other things, these suspicious things, right? Like, these are like the little subtle things that we go, dude, they're selling kids, right? They're selling young tail, right? And we're going, oh, this is kind of weird. Now, what about the stuff that we allow to happen and is just in the open that nobody ever addresses? You've got little 6, 7-year-old kids, 5-year-old babies, basically prancing around in swimsuits, and people are going, and their parents are taking them to it, going, this, and that, and this, and that, and they're pageant winners, and you're dressing them up like whores, putting makeup on them, you know, and then prancing them around to be rated by people. And you can go, oh, it's a time-honored tradition and it's pageantry and whatever. Or you can go, it's a little fucking weird and it seems like you're parading your kid around for everybody to see. Or this product of yours, right? This product, right? Which essentially that's what it is. You know, that's what it is. It's a product. No matter how you look at it, you can say it's, you know, prostitution, you know, but that's kind of a stretch. But no matter how you look at it, this pageantry thing makes her a product. And so that to me immediately, like, takes the factor to the parents, like, way up. Like, okay, these parents are, first of all, they're weird. And, like, the mom, like, yeah, okay, whatever. She's, like, in this pageantry all her life, and so she does it to her kid. But what if it was, like, deeper than that? Like, what if that's just, like, this long, like, conspiracy that she's been involved in all these years? She's been a part of this secret, and this is me, like, reaching too, right? She's been a part of this secret society where they sell daughters and young children, and they prance them around in front of people, and they go, here's how we do it. And the dad knows about it, and they know about it, and they keep doing it, and there's all these things involved. And then all of a sudden they get these people and they go, hey, you can come over and bang our daughter for this, you know, whatever. You can jack off to her in front of her or whatever, and it'll be fine, and you can pay us. And so we make all this money, and that's how we're super fucking rich. Not to mention the dad has, like, this, you know, whatever Silicon Valley crap, right? So they're rich. They're filthy fucking rich. And then they sell their daughters, you know, to get money, more money. This is theory, right? This is my theory. And so now there's all this weird stuff involved, right? The parents get these outsiders, right? Maybe this Bangkok guy really was involved. Maybe he was there. Maybe he did jack off to JonBenét while there, right? But then these other people are involved. They go, oh, there was an accident or something happened where the daughter finally realizes she can call the cops or something, right? There was some foul play afoot, and the kid gets murdered by somebody, one of the people that was the suspects that know the parents, right? It could have been it could have been the mom, it could have been the dad.
Oh, it says reconnecting, yeah.
Oh, they lost us for a second.
No, it's still there. It's still there.
Oh, so we're good. Okay, so my point is this, and this is my logic takes me to all this. All this stuff just seems weirdly connected, and it seems so weird that all of this stuff. Now you go, okay, maybe the parents did this and then they cleaned up the scene. But now imagine if there's like 6 or 7 people involved that can clean up the scene. That makes it like exponentially easier to make the murder look like weird, right? Like, oh, who knows who did it? Who knows who did it, right? And like, man, like, there's a lot of things that you go, I don't know. And like like it's hard for me to like speculate on that because I empathize in different cases. Like I go, well, the kid says that the parents weren't mean to the kid, so maybe that's him lying. Maybe he's really good at lying, or maybe it's true. Maybe they did have like a good household. Maybe not. Maybe there was no weird pedophile crap. But there's a pedophile involved somehow, right? There's a couple pedophiles involved. That pageantry shit attracts pedophiles. We know that. And let's be honest, putting your kid in a pageant and dressing them up like a whore is it's a little chimo. Like we know, like it seems a little weird, right? Like that's fucking weird, right? And so I don't know. It makes me shake my head and go, this is where I'm at. Somehow all these people are involved, and somehow I don't know how, but they're all involved, and they're just like OJ, man, just like the South Park guys say, they're just people that got away with murder somehow. And like the worst crime to me is not just the murder. Like the murder obviously is the worst crime, right? But the worst part is that like prancing your daughter around like that, I'll say this. In the end, it has made me totally disgusted with people that put their children in pageants. Their children. Like, it's one thing if you're like an 18-year-old and you're going to be a beauty queen, but if you're a child going around in pageants, that's fucking creepy, dude. I don't care who you are. I'm saying it. If you are offended by that, you're fucking weird if you're putting your kid in a pageant, dude. Bottom line.
So
that's how I feel about it.
So here's my case right here.
All right. Okay. Yeah, let me hear.
I have to actually show it on the screen because let me actually make my screen a little bit bigger here so that I can, hopefully you guys can see it a little bit better. So here's what I've come up with. All right. Here's our board, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can see here at the center of it all is Wayfair. No doubt in my mind, right?
Yeah.
Ghislaine Maxwell, she works for Wayfair, but she's also like connected to the Ramseys. So she collects her goal is to get a hold of JonBenét Ramsey for Wayfair, right?
Right.
So that's where she comes into play, all right?
Right.
Unfortunately for her, she got brought into it, right? But she was too late because Michael Helgoth, right? Or no, I'm sorry, where am I at? He was the guy who supposedly committed suicide, right? But he was
Mm-hmm.
having a dispute with the Ramseys, right? So he has nothing to do with Wayfair. He didn't come through here, right? He comes around and he goes there to kill somebody as out of anger because of the whole dispute. He goes there, ends up finding JonBenét Ramsey eating Gunther's pineapples or whatever the kid's name is. I forget what his name is.
Gunther's better than whatever his name is. We'll go with Gunther.
Because she's eating his pineapples. He finds her, kills her. And he's not particularly happy about it, but he's going to get his pound of flesh, right?
Mm-hmm,
so he takes her down and throws her in the basement, whatever. But Santa Claus, right? He loves JonBenét Ramsey in a totally like normal, like old man loves a little kid because he's Santa Claus. He's just there to help the kid, to be there for the kids, right? So he loves her to death, and there's a family friend, right? So he finds out, right? So you hear he's connected to her because he brings Christmas presents. Right? And he loves JBR, JonBenét Ramsey. He's the trigger man. He finds out that Michael Helgoth, he's done his own Santa detective work, right? He finds out that it was him who killed JonBenét Ramsey. So he goes and he kills Helgoth, right? Looks like suicide. He's an old man though, and Santa Claus, he's not a professional criminal. So he doesn't do a very good job of turning.
It's funny because I picture him doing this all still dressed up like Santa.
Right, me too. That's how
like
it was when I was.
He's not going out in his civilian clothes. He's dressed up like Santa, going around doing all this.
But nobody suspects him all Santa, right?
Yeah.
So it's a smart move on his part, but he's not very good at covering up his tracks. So he ends up making it look like a suicide. So he tries, but he fails.
Right.
Anyways, you're probably wondering about Gary Oliva, right? The pedophile. He's just a customer, right, of Wayfair.
Yeah.
He just buys kids, right, and diddles kids. Yeah. So he's tied to it because Wayfair, he buys his kids from Wayfair, but so he kind of knows, like this circle right here. This is pretty. They kind of know each other. They're from the same town. They know each other. And then everybody's tied to JonBenét Ramsey either directly or through Wayfair, one or the other. That's my opinion on the matter. And you're not going to convince me otherwise. Now, you can convince me otherwise, actually.
I think it's funny that we both came to like a similar conclusion about it. Like they're connected somehow because of pedophilia. Like they're selling that kids. That's what they were doing. They were selling that kid somehow, and everybody was connected it somehow. So
Well,
what about
Yeah, the only way you're going to convince me otherwise is if it's that JonBenét Ramsey is actually still alive, which is actually definitely a possibility, and we're going to talk about that real quick. Let me pull that one up.
That's so funny to me.
Oh yeah, here's something else too about Maxwell Ghislaine or Ghislaine Maxwell that I forgot to tell you about. She's actually, this is how John Podesta gets involved, right? Remember this whole Madeline McCann situation?
Yeah, with Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Yeah, there they are in the picture, right? There was also other people, like parties that they were interested in finding. And look who it is there on the bottom row in the middle. Somehow she's even involved in that. So if you ever wonder like what's going on with or how they all are tied together, then there you go. So here's a cute little picture of JonBenét Ramsey, right, when she was doing her pageantry stuff. And if there's one thing that pisses me off, it's like lace gloves like that. But there's actually a theory that's going around, that it has been going around for a long time, that JonBenét Ramsey actually didn't die. She grew up and became Katy Perry. Now, the theory around that comes from, let's see here, in her memoir, right? So Katy Perry has a memoir, if you can believe that. There's actually a line in her memoir that
says, a real page turner.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody I'm sure it flew off the shelves. She said, "Not that I was one of those stage kids. There was no JonBenét Ramsey inside me waiting to burst out." Which is weird. Like, why would you even mention that? Unless to like deflect it. Because like that's something that you would do. You know what I mean? Like if you wanted to spell, you could use that later and be like, well, I specifically said that I wasn't JonBenét Ramsey. Why would I say that if I was? Why would I bring that sort of attention on myself? And but this whole theory actually came out in December of 2014 in a YouTube post. Some dude made a video on YouTube about it, and that video has been taken down. It got taken down because it was you know how things go. Like when they take things down off of YouTube, that to me is an admission of guilt, right?
Right.
And that's what happened to this guy's video. And since people have like, as soon as that happened, I think everybody kind of like jumped on board and was like, well, clearly there's something to it, right? And then we've got the other excuse that they had. Let me see if I can. The other interesting thing was this particular YouTuber had mentioned that the parents even look alike, and this is where I kind of disagree. The mom, maybe. The dad, I have a real hard time. But the way he explained it, is like even down to the eyebrows. Like they went like real in depth on comparing these people and the parents or whatever, and apparently there are like some certain facial features that are very hard to change through plastic surgery.
Yeah, I see the resemblance actually. I do see it.
Okay.
Yeah. I do see the resemblance. But I will say one thing that we probably didn't add is the mom actually died. She died of ovarian cancer. So
after like 14 years, she was dealing with that.
Yeah. So if she was a murderer, she's got her comeuppance that way.
Yeah, we're not going to get any justice in that case.
Yeah.
And then if you want to compare Katy Perry and JonBenét Ramsey too, here's the actual final picture, like the last picture of JonBenét Ramsey when she was alive, right here. And I mean, you're not really going to be able to do a good job of comparing the two, but I figured, it's worth seeing, and that way you can kind of see. It's almost haunting, like when you look at it, knowing that that was the last picture that was ever taken of her.
Right.
So weird.
Yeah, it is.
So, yeah. I like to do that to you guys. I like to make you guys come away
cringe.
feeling all shitty.
There you have it.
But yeah, I don't know. I think here's the fun thing about that theory about Katy Perry is actually Katy Perry used to be a gospel singer.
That's right.
Katie Hudson was her name. And one of the kids I put in the army, his parents were friends with Katy Perry's parents. So like he used to talk all the time about like not necessarily growing up knowing her, but he always talked about how like he knew the parents. I'm like, that's kind of like a stupid claim to fame. Like, oh, I know Katy Perry's parents through my parents. They were family friends. But he would always talk about that. And so when you look at it, like Katy Perry was, I think, she's 6 years older than JonBenét Ramsey was. And so either the only way you can make this work is if Katy Perry is actually 6 years younger than she reports that she is, or, I mean, that's really it, because there was a period of time, there was never a period of time where people knew who Katy Perry was prior to 1996. So a lot of people say, well, Katy Perry kind of popped up out of nowhere. Well, that's not true. Since like 2000, we've kind of known who Katy Perry was because of her gospel records or whatever. Gospel records. What is this? The 1970s? Her gospel albums. And so the only way that would work is if she is 6 years younger than she reportedly is. Because if you go to Google, you can do the math and be like, well, no, she's 6 years older. But if she was 6 years younger than she reports that she is, then this would be pretty easy one to like kind of sign on to. Am I saying that it's true? I don't know. I don't think so. I think JonBenét Ramsey's probably really dead. And I mean, it's been talked about long enough that good grief, like if she's not, like imagine how many people have wasted their lives trying to solve this murder mystery only to find out that she's now singing.
There's that FBI guy. What's his name? I read on the Wikipedia. There's an FBI guy that he was hired by the parents back when it happened in '96, and like to this day is still like working on the case. To this day,
awesome. Yeah,
he's still doing it. Yeah, which is like fucking 20. How many years?
Well, it was 1996, so 24 years.
Yeah, 24 years. Goddamn, it's a long time. Throw in the towel, bro. Throw in the towel.
Yeah, it's time to call it a day, dude.
Yeah.
Like that episode of Family Guy when Peter says he goes up to the Ramsey parents and he's like, I will not rest until I solve this mystery, till I find the killers of your daughter. And they're like, no, don't worry about it. Like, it's really okay. Like, don't beat yourself up. Don't break your back trying to deal with this. Like, just forget about it. It's not a big deal, because clearly they were guilty. That's what pisses me off too about a lot of these people is, remember, well, you probably don't remember, nobody remembers that episode, the psychic episode where we were trying to get Angela to tell us something that like only a psychic could tell us, and she was talking about how she communes with children, like missing children or dead children or whatever. And I said, did you ever like reach out to the spirit of JonBenét Ramsey and try to figure out who did it? And she's like, and she said, well, I think we all know who did it. And I never pressed further because, frankly, I didn't care. I never thought that this day would come where I'd like have to know. But like, I wish I would have known. I wish I would have known then.
Yeah, well, who? What do you mean, who? I think we all know. At this point, we don't know. No. But I don't know. I mean, if we take away all the evidence and all the hullabaloo that we just went through, my first instinct would be it was the mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to blame her, V. She's dead.
Yeah, that's right.
Like it's easy to blame a target that's not there. You know what I mean, V?
Yeah.
Shame on you for attacking this woman. She's not even here to defend herself, poor woman. Yeah. Meanwhile, she probably choked the shit out of her daughter and left her in the basement. I don't know. Personally, like I told you before the show, I said I don't even know. Like, I couldn't even begin to speculate. I could speculate all day long, but I would be like, every time you presented a new suspect, I'd be like, well, yeah, it was the housekeeper.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's exactly where I was at. After I read the whole thing, I was like, well, it's this guy for sure. And then I go, well, no, it's this guy for sure. Like, what the hell?
Every time you're introduced with a new suspect, you're just like, well, clearly it's him. And then they're like, well, what about the brother? Oh, there's him too, probably.
Yeah, he got mad because she ate his pineapples and
poor kid. He was just
hit her with a flashlight, dude.
And then the dad wiped down the flashlight. Truth be told, if I were to try to like, if I were to dream up a real scenario,
Yeah.
probably that was it. Like you said, and how uncomfortable that made me feel when you asked me that question. I'm like, that's probably it, because of how uncomfortable like I felt at the time. I'm like, dang, like everything. If you put yourself into that position where like if one of your kids killed one of your other kids, what would you do in that situation? And then you kind of find yourself in that position where you're like, the deed is done. I don't want to lose both kids.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I wonder what the relationship... I would have to see what the relationship is between... There are a few things that would have to, like, that would finally solidify it for me, and this is it.
Yeah.
I would have to see the relationship between the dad and the son. I would have to see what that was like over the years, even to this day. And even if I were to, like, be in the same room with them, I would say something about it and see how they interacted with one another after that.
Right.
I would have to see that. And then I would also have to... I would have to know what the dad's relationship to JonBenét was. Like, what did he, like, dads naturally gravitate towards daughters because, you know, the first love of any girl's life is their dad.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's that relationship that you have, that bond that you have. And I don't have a daughter, so I don't know what that's like. I have 3 sons, but it doesn't mean that I love them any less than I would a daughter. I just don't have that relationship that I think you would have to have. And if I saw that he didn't have that relationship with a daughter or with JonBenét, that would certainly go in the evidence pile.
Yeah, right.
If he was willing to cover up that sort of thing. Because if he's willing to write up, it's one thing like if your dog dies, yeah, it sucks. And sometimes you have a dog that just you fucking can't stand. And if it dies, you're like, well, he was a part of the family, and you know, I get it, and whatever. I feel a little bummed out, but at the same time, I'm not like super brokenhearted about it. Like, perhaps that was what happened with this dude. Like, he just didn't have that emotional attachment to his daughter. And when it happened, he was like, well, this sucks, but, you know, I'm not going to lose my son, you know, my firstborn son, my lineage, my legacy, you know. So I got to take care of him. I don't know. That's my opinion on the matter. And but other than that, it's probably just aliens.
Yeah. Yeah, aliens. You think aliens were involved?
Somehow
it was It was a time traveler, traveling Hitler. Remember time traveling Hitler? We don't ever talk about that. He just shows up and like causes problems for people all over time.
He's the worst. So to the final case that we closed from our cold case file. Congratulations. If you didn't see, Jay Coop said in the chat, police chief slowly nodding in approval at both theories. I'm making you 2 head of the unsolved homicide squad immediately. Good work, detectives. So we've been to our promotion. Yeah.
Actually to speaking of promotion, let's do a little shameless self-promotion. Guys, this doesn't have to be the end of our Swingin' Dick series. If you guys have an idea for us, like shoot us an idea. You know, we're always on the Twitter or whatever. Send us a message if you got an idea, something you'd like to hear us discuss or talk about or whatever. We're open to it. At this point, we've got nothing for next week.
Which is no different than any other week, really.
Yeah. So feel free to like send us. As always, I love you guys. I appreciate you coming out and like, you know, spending time with us, and go buy some of our stuff. Someone buy the J-Rab shirt, man. Like,
yeah,
do
or
that.
Visa.
Yeah, the Young Tail shirt. Yeah,
be the first and only to end up getting that. I will say, speaking of buying our merch, we had a new super fan. I always call them super fans. I say super fan status every time somebody buys something. Jeff, a longtime friend of the show, at morbid_Jeff. If you want a good friend on Twitter, he's a funny dude, and you know, he's definitely been a part of the team and been a part of our tight-knit circle of friends since the beginning. You know, go follow him. He bought the new hoodie, and we said that we'd give him a shout out on the show. So thank you, Jeff. I know many of you have bought stuff in the past and haven't gotten a shout out, so let me see if I can do this. Thank you, Branny. Thank you, Lil Lottie, of course, who was actually the first person to buy anything from us. I should have said that first. Thank you, Mike in Manitoba. And if anyone else has shirts and I've forgotten, I'm sorry. My brain is fried. And thank you guys for coming and tuning in. Thank you for joining us on this on this journey that we've taken, this expanding professional journey that we've taken into becoming the head of the homicide squad.
Unsolved homicide squad.
Solving these cold cases. We're happy to do it, and if you ever need any cases solved, be sure to send them to our HR department. Send them, call in the tip line, 1-800 you had me at Swinging Dicks. But we'll see you guys next week. If nothing else, be sure to follow us and all that cool stuff. We will see you all next week.